Welcome. My name is Michael Mindillo. I'm president of First Service Residential, and it is great to be here at this expo, which every year has just a great turnout. Probably one of the best turnouts in reference to the combination of residents, managers, management, and professionals and vendors. So it's usually a really terrific show. So thank you for coming here today. What I thought I would do is set the tone. We have an hour together. We are going to have an opportunity for Q&A with that. What I will ask is there is a microphone, so I'll probably ask one of our team members to pass that around when that time comes. But what I'd like to do is one question per person, just to keep it flowing for other people that may want to ask a question. And I would try to not have it on a personal level, just kind of keep it in respect of the industry. I'll say more high level, if that's possible. So what we're going to do is I'm going to ask the panelists here to just give a minute to a minute and a half background of themselves, because I think it's important as you came to this session is you're looking for maybe new ideas or opportunities that can help you in your situations that you may come across at your communities, that you want to make sure people who are giving you these suggestions have some credibility. So I do think it's important that that is. So I'm going to ask if we start with Donna, just to kind of give a background. If you could speak into the microphone, Donna.
Can everybody hear me? I'm new to microphones, so this is a big thing for me today. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the seminar. My name is Donna Fiore. I have a background in real estate. I was actually familiar with the management side from the developer point of view. I'd been in building for over 20 years before moving over to property management. And I will tell you, once I came to this side of the business, I never knew that my psychology degree could be so helpful. I'm sure that many of you can appreciate that. In any event, I have been with First Service for 8 years now, and I work in a position where I am overseeing the management team and working with the boards so that we can resolve conflicts and find resolutions.
Alan? Good afternoon. My name is Al Trachtenberg. I'm in-house counsel and director of risk management for First Service. My background by education and degree is law. Licensed here in New Jersey and in Massachusetts, and practiced here for about 7 or 8 years, and got out of the practice and got into a couple of other things. Eventually, I found myself reorganized out of my position, and at the time, my dad was president of the condo association where my parents lived. He introduced me to the owner of the management company that was handling the account at that time, and that's how I got into this industry. When I did, I got into it on the management side of things, managing properties. Then through the course of the 25 years that I've been in the industry, I think I've touched pretty much everything that could be in a portfolio for a company. So I've been a sited manager. I've handled a portfolio of accounts, condo associations, homeowners associations, large-scale active adult lifestyles communities, high-rises, co-ops, condominiums, converted buildings. I've touched them. I've been a regional director, so I've supervised a team of managers as well. 18 years ago, I joined First Service. Michael and I knew each other in the industry. He knew my background, and we had talked over the years about doing some in-house work. And in 2007, as part of a bit of a reorganization within our region, I became in-house counsel for the company and divested myself, so to speak, of my management responsibilities. A couple years ago, took on the risk management responsibilities for the region, too. So I think there's a unique perspective that I have on things because I have been a hands-on manager for almost half of the career that I've been in the industry, as well as the other half being in-house counsel.
Okay. Well, look at everybody here on this beautiful day. So I hope you're all here because of the sun, but also to see us today. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Cindy Pereira. I currently am a vice president of a high-rise division in First Service Residential, currently at a high-rise building where we've just underwent a very large conversion. My background is 25 years in property management. In 2012, I was the president of the Community Association Institute. I hold a PCAM designation. I was a chief operating officer for several years at another property management company. So I have really been involved in all aspects of the property management business. On a personal note, in my personal life, I have also been on the political side of being involved in my township for 15 years as an elected official, a councilwoman, which really helps, again, with the perspective, because most of the communities are just really like smaller scale municipalities, whether it's from budgeting or dealing with people's largest investments or tending to being transparent and letting people know what's going on and making them feel comfortable to live in their homes and enjoy where they live.
Thank you. And again, just for the new people that may have come in during this, what I just wanted is to take the first 10 minutes of just to get the credibility of the people that are here, and they're going to share with you kind of their experience and stories of situations that hopefully could help you in your situations. I have been in the business for a little over 28 years. This is all I've done since college, so I'm very familiar with managing communities, managing difficult situations, and really dealing with what I say the heart and soul of what this industry is really people and personality. The bricks and mortars are very, very important to a community. The financials are incredibly important. But at the end of the day, it's managing a lot of personalities in a community. And sometimes you have a board of 5, or you have 7 or even 13 on a board. And you've got a lot of different personalities that come from different skill sets. And kind of working that together is an art in itself. So what we're going to do is give some scenarios and situations of experience. And again, we could take this whatever avenue you'd like, in a sense, if we do a Q&A during that, or we can go maybe the first 20, 30 with some tactical and some strategy approaches on dealing with situations like that, and then open it up for you, if that's okay. Man, we are a packed house here. Man, don't turn around, everybody. There's a lot of people standing on the wall. Okay, so Donna, you want to take first
sure.
roll at crack at this?
Happy to. So we all have them, right? We all have that problem child in our community, the ones who are always complaining. They're always have a better way to manage the landscape. Okay, I'm going to stop for 1 minute. Can everybody hear me okay? I want to make sure that I'm projecting well enough, because generally I don't speak this loud. So if we're good, everybody good in the back? All right. So what I was saying here is we all have them. The problem... Would you like me to stand?
Sure.
You can take the microphone out. Slide.
Okay, look, so I've got the microphone and I'm standing. Just don't ask me to sing, all right? That's where I'm drawing the line.
That's where he and I come in.
Not my forte. You don't want to hear it anyway, so, all right.
We do a great 3-part harmony.
So as we were saying, the problem child, we all have them. They're all in our community. They have a better way of managing, right? They have a better way of handling the landscaping. They have a better way of handling the snow removal. They have a better way of doing whatever it is that comes up. And they're very critical. They're critical of management. They're critical of the board. They're critical of their neighbors. We know these people. So many of us have names for them. And I think, a very kind a reference to them is to call them a neighborhood nudge. That's the term I use. In the back of my mind, I might be saying something different. But when I'm speaking to you, that's what I'm going to call them. They're nudges. They're coming at us constantly. They're coming at the board. They're coming at management. So how do we deal with somebody like that? There's really... What we have found that works is an approach, and I'm going to call it OCD. It's really about being organized, having an organized approach. It's about the communication, making sure that we've got that communication. It has to be going both ways. It has to be going from management out and from the board out together. So, and it has to be documented. There needs to be documentation, so it's a 3-point plan. So what we found is if we're hitting on all 3 points over a process, we generally have success. So let me jump into that. I'm just looking at my notes for a minute, excuse me. The one thing that we find, and we work with many different associations, and there's so many different types of people in here. As board members, you all approach situations in a different manner. Some of you choose to approach the conflict head-on. Others choose to maybe take more of a back seat to it. It's really, how the board feels comfortable approaching it. But as your management agent, we try to direct you in a consistent approach with that. So the first thing would be these people who are the chronic complainers, we give them an audience. And by that I mean it's not just that they come to the manager and they start telling the manager what the issues are. It's a matter of getting the board and management together in a closed-door environment along with this person, this nudge who has the issues. Let's sit down. Let's hear what the problems are. Because once we have it on the table, there's going to be a host of issues generally. It's usually not just one. They're going to bring everything to the table. But that's what we really want them to do. Because we know as we're starting to sort through that, there are those that are really important to them and others that they've just brought to the table because they brought them there. They brought everything with them. All their luggage was packed and brought for them. So the next point is when we're in that meeting, we need to listen. I mean, we have to have the open ears, but we have to have the open mind also. So while they may be saying one thing, they truly mean something other. And you really need to understand you're assessing people through body language, through the eye contact, not just what they're saying, but how they're saying it. I mean, we're talking about emotions. Someone could be very emotional about what it is that they're bringing to the table and how they feel about it. And so it's not just the words, it's not just the issue. It's really about listening and trying to understand. And we always talk about empathy and compassion, and that's important to have that even when we're so frustrated with, the situation that we may be dealing with. So after we listen to that, then there needs to be a plan, all right? There has to be a win-win. You're listening, they come to you with a host of issues. The next step to that is to let them know that you've listened. Before that meeting is concluded, it's a summary of what was talked about so that everybody walks away understanding these were the issues, this is what we discussed. And then it needs to be documented. An email that follows, from the management agent to the chronic complainer, the neighborhood nudge, just something that now you have it documented. Because the one thing you always want to remember is you don't know if this is going to go the route of some kind of legal suit. So it's always CYA. Make sure that you've crossed your T's, dotted your I's, you've got everything in place. So as you're going through the list, you want to give them a win. And this is where I want to take it down to a situation that we actually had occur, and we were able to work with this person and resolve a sticky situation. So we took on a new association, and the board had made us aware that this person was going to be a chronic complainer. And they in fact were. They had a host of issues. And what it really we recognized what it was really starting to come down to is they were complaining about the ice melt in the winter, complaining that the snow wasn't handled properly, the clearing wasn't handled properly, but primarily they didn't like the fact that there was ice melt being used, right? So what do you do with something like that? Because of course, as boards, you have a fiduciary responsibility to your community, and the liability issue is huge. So then we move into the warmer weather, and now they're complaining about the pre-emergent. They don't want the pre-emergent. They don't want the chemicals being used. They don't want their lawn cut. I mean, it just went on and on. Ultimately, when we sat down with them and we dug down a little bit deeper, this person was very much a naturalist. They wanted everything organic. That's really what it was coming down to. So it wasn't so much that they were complaining about the snow or the fact that the clearing wasn't done right or the ice wasn't handled. It was about the product that was being used. And they didn't want it used on their home or on their property. So what we directed the board to do in this case, and they really just hadn't thought of it. It was a simple solution, but it was a matter of putting a policy resolution in place for people who did not want the pre-emergent to opt out. Now, it's, in bigger communities, and this was a large community, that's a bigger task because you have so many people. But we worked with our partner, who was the landscaper. We came in and we said, how do we put this together? And then made sure that, working with our attorney, how we could put this resolution in place so that the resident was satisfied, they could opt out, the board was protected with the liability issues, and the landscaper would then have a process in place so they knew who was opting out and the pre-emergent wasn't put down. Now, the communication for something like this had to be very clear also. So, there had to be the communication coming out from the management to the homeowners in advance of something like this happens, so that we tell them it's going to happen, we tell them when it's happening, and then we told them that it happened. So once we had all of that, that's our documentation on top of having the resolution. So while it didn't resolve all the problems, it took care of this person who was consistently complaining to us about various issues because they felt that they finally had something. They had some control over what could and couldn't be done in their community. So it goes right back to what I said. It was the organization of it, it was the communication, and then the documentation, 3 key points.
So I think a takeaway on this part first, I think is very important, is we can't forget there's 2 sides of a community. There is the business side of the community. So if you're a board member in this audience, or you are a manager working, or even a professional vendor that works with an association, there's a business side. The business side is that's collecting the revenue that's coming in and making sure that it's being properly put in all its different in its different buckets, and then it's managing that process. But then there's the human side. And that's the one side that we forget, that people move into the community. Most people are not actively involved in the community per se of the business side. They're actively involved in the emotional side. And that's something that we can't forget, that there's an emotion and there's logic. And sometimes emotion and logic don't equal up. It's a balance. It's not one or the other, it's both. And it has to be fed and read by you. Donna talked about empathy. There's a difference between empathy and sympathy. So empathy is when you become a good listener. Good listeners are not ones who hear things, they listen, which means you have to be engaged with that individual, that they realize that you are actually listening to what they say. And it's going in with a positive intent. Now, this is very difficult because this comes to the emotional side. Logical, we'll all sit here and say, that makes sense. I want to assume that that resident has positive intent where they're coming from. But emotionally, when you're in there, you don't feel that. You are immediately not listening, you're hearing, which means this creates the conflict. So we as board members, I look at you as community leaders. I look at management companies as leadership guidance, that we have to guide through this. So sometimes we have to take the bigger position in kind of biting our tongue and want to say that maybe this person's coming with positive intent. And by the way, as I said earlier, doing this 28 years, I get it. There's a lot of people that don't have positive intent. So I don't want you to be thinking and saying, I'm not in reality. I'm very much in reality. But I do think you can diffuse a situation by your body language and in the tone you talk. And your tone and how you talk is what people will not remember so much of what you say, but they will remember how you made them feel. And if they feel that you're dismissing them, if they feel that you are giving them sympathy instead of empathy, that creates more conflict. So somewhere along the line, somebody's got to take the bigger position. And I say that if you chose to be a board member, then you chose, by the way, you're grossly overpaid, all you board members. So we got to put a stop to that, okay? But if you really look from the standpoint of what your role is you took on a leadership role. But see, you're human too. And the human side that you have is you want to go to the pool or the clubhouse and not have someone chew your ear off. If you don't like people, quit. If you don't like conflict, quit. If you don't like people saying that you're not good at what you do, quit. Because this is the role. The expectation of this is to say that you sit in a leadership role, that people are going to challenge you. But your role is to look above that. And that's the difficult part, because we all have point of views. Our point of views come to us from our experiences in life. So people have had careers, whatever that may be. And those careers influenced you along with the people that you grew up. We all have moral compasses. Some have stricter moral compasses than others. But it's a point of view. And a point of view is really one they see through that. That's the hardest part of this leadership role, is to really take away from the content of what it is and find out what's the root of the cause. In Donna's situation, the root of the cause may have been that they didn't feel they were properly listened to. Maybe the solution they don't like, and maybe they can't have it. But it's putting that forth out front. That's a united front that you board members in this room have to kind of be united as a team. Because if you're running rogue and you're having separate conversations, all you're doing is you're feeding culturally that type of mentality where you have to kind of unite as a team. That doesn't mean you don't have to, you might not agree, you might have different opinions, but what you stand on, you have to all support on that. It's a very, very difficult role that you're in. It really is, because I always say that there's never a day that someone gives you a break, but they're looking for us to give a break all the time. But that's the role and the position we're in. So Alan's going to give you a little bit perspective from kind of a legal side, but then how that has to marry from logic to emotion as well.
I am standing, by the way. Not much of a difference, was there? Two shows on Saturday. So from a legal side, and I don't want to get into too much of the legal because this is conflict resolution, and if we're involved in litigation, we're not really resolving conflict. We're, to a degree, creating more. But from a legal perspective, what can be done, certainly if there is someone who is gotten to the point of, shall we, crossing the line. I mean, they're just not engaged in as Donna pointed out. Association counsel certainly can send a cease and desist letter. Following up a cease and desist letter, there can certainly be a second letter. And then within whatever your governing documents allow, someone can be fined. They can have privileges suspended. If it continues, you go to court, you can get restraining orders. That's costly, it's time consuming. So hopefully it doesn't get to that, but I think we all know that there are, unfortunately, some people that just thrive on the conflict. Maybe they don't belong in communities, such as this. They just don't understand or don't want to understand what it takes to live in communities and respect that there are several different standards, different opinions on how things operate. Their expectations, no matter how much you speak to them about them, aren't in line with everyone else's. And there's going to be sometimes need for some litigation. But beyond that, in my experience, what I've seen, work often as well too is kind of the keep your friends close and your enemies closer strategy. So there's the owners that are in the board meetings all the time, questioning and challenging all the decisions of the board. Why did you pick this contract? Why are you spending this? What about that? What about that? And as Donna said, you sit down and you speak to them. You kind of get to the root of where their issues are, but bring them in. Kind of stroke the ego a little bit. We hear what you're saying. Obviously, you're very concerned about what's going on in our community. You're interested. You're asking some very pointed questions. How would you resolve these issues? Put them, on the hot seat. What are your solutions? What do you think that we are doing that we haven't done that you would do? This is wrong. What would you do? Well, like fire the landscaper. Well, okay, that's not a solution because we're going to bring in another landscaper. You're not going to be satisfied with them. So specifically, how would you address this problem? Now, maybe they are coming up with some good solutions. Maybe they're not, and they've got nothing to say. Well, what would you do? Hamina. Okay, well, thank you very much for your time. How about running for the board? You've got some great ideas. Obviously, you are interested in this community. And what I've seen sometimes, and probably all of you too, you challenge someone. Why do you run for the board? The election's in a couple of months. And, well, sometimes they will say, yeah, I will. And it's incredible, when they're on this side of the table, a couple months later, and I've seen it happen on a couple of occasions, when the questions come from the crowd that they were asking, the response is, you have no idea how hard we work.
Absolutely.
I come home and I prepare for this board meeting and I work a full-time job, et cetera, et cetera. When you bring someone in to be part of the solution, sometimes that does diffuse, where they're challenging everything because maybe they want information. As Donna said, communicate. We need to be transparent with everyone. When we're not, what we call the silent spiral, people make their own, they fill in the blanks about what's going on. And then they figure, well, if the board isn't telling us, management isn't telling us what's going on, it must be a reason. It's because they've got some side deal going on, some favorite vendors coming in, whatever the issue. We know it's not the case, but the only things that shouldn't be disclosed are the things which legally we can't disclose, the things that are confidential. There's no reason why not. Ultimately, they're going to find out about things. So why not be open and transparent about the board business? Here in New Jersey, of course, Open Meetings Act, we've got to make our decisions in an open meeting. Irrespective of workshop executive, you still got to come before, your ownership and put on the record what you're doing. So, nip that in the bud and be open with people about things. Now, of course, friends close, enemies closer. It runs a risk. That person gets on a committee or something and then starts taking over the committee. Or they become the board member now that starts yapping at everybody. I mean, that's the risk. But I think it's probably a risk worth taking to try to diffuse what the challenges are from someone in that regard. I think. Trying to think that I have seen that operate in several instances, and actually, incredibly, it has worked out to the advantage of the board and the association. That when you have challenged these individuals to come up with the solutions, tell us what you think we're doing wrong, and maybe we're just unaware of it. Incredibly, they do. And they do have some pretty reasoned responses to things, some solutions that we didn't think of. And as I said, the ones that just sit there and just yammer on, after a while, and we have seen this in some communities, the people that are just always belligerent and always obnoxious, other homeowners, figure them out. Make sure you have promoters coming to your board meetings, the people that are in support of you. If they're in your board meetings, and we've all heard, the undertow when that person always comes up to speak, and it's like, ugh, the groan of them again. When they're continually obnoxious and just defeatist, they start losing influence in the community because people don't want to be around them. And we've had owners actually move out of communities because they've just been isolated. Nobody wants to sit by them in the pool anymore. Nobody's looking to be their friend. Unfortunately, I think they also move to other communities that we manage, so we deal with them eventually. You're okay, we're not. But for at least in the short term, it helps. It just gets to a point where they're just outcasts, and leave them to themselves. But trying to bring them in and be part of the solution, we have found is helpful, and it's worked incredibly well in many instances.
Thank you. And Alan's going to be performing at Bally's on Saturday. Get your tickets there. So kind of the punchline, I think, on Alan's part of this is I think you can't ever not over-communicate. Don't put yourself in a situation where somebody can call you out. Obviously, the confidential stuff stays confidential. I think what I have seen in my career is when you have difficult situations with a resident or a group, sometimes there's a group of them, that I think when you can approach them that you want to discuss situations and really kind of try to get to the root of them, it's really trying to diffuse it. Now, here's the reality. Sometimes you can't. You can try everything that we're saying and others that we haven't said. And sometimes you just have to come to the conclusion is that the 5% that are making the noise makes you feel like it's 90%. Don't lose track of the numbers, because the numbers won't lie. So we have this with our managers, and I've said this for years. Managers would come back from a meeting and said, oh my God, it was crazy last night's meeting. Everyone came out screaming, yelling. It was really a lot of pandemonium. There was no control. And I said, everybody came out. I said, wow, it's a lot of people. It's 1,000 homes. I said, so 1,000 people? They go, oh, no, not 1,000, like 80. I go, oh, well, that's a lot less than 1,000. And then I said, so out of 80, everyone was yelling? Well, no, it was probably like 8. And all 8 of them? No, it was 2. But here's the reality. The reality is that in that manager's mind, that's what it felt like. And that's when your emotion overrides logic. You've got to keep the balance. If there are 10 people, 20 people who constantly come and are just looking to stir the pot. By the way, everyone earns and should have the respect that they should speak up. And you should listen. notwithstanding that that person that maybe 8 out of 10 times says stuff that the entire room is cringing, but 2 of them might be something that you may use. So as a leader, you have to take each one of those situations. But as Alan said, in a lot of communities, the lack of attention is what you give them in a sense of where let people give the credibility on that. So if you answer the question, sometimes less is more. We try to fight our way out of problems by keep talking. And in reality is each side is not listening. So sometimes an answer could be short and sweet, then be silent. Let it be a pregnant pause. Let it stay that way because you're done. You said your piece and that's it. So some people, it's very difficult for us is less is more. So those are things to keep in mind with that. Now we're going to have Cindy Pereira. Now.
So I'll start with a song, probably, because I do sing. So, no. All right.
This is really a road show now.
Yeah,
We're
this
going
is.
on.
So my point was, a lot of times, and I think all of the board members sitting in this room have experienced this, everybody looks for that couple of minutes of their stardom time. And a lot of residents pick the most inopportunity times to go and say things to a board member, and especially at board meetings. They wait and they wait and they wait. You've seen them 100 times possibly. They've seen the manager 100 times, but yet they wait for the night of the board meeting to bring up their individual issues, correct? You've seen it a million times, right? So recently at a board meeting, I had a resident who got up and she was very vocal about the washing machines because she was only getting boil or scolding, which I believe was hot and warm and cold or whatever, but she was very vocal, very upset. So I think that at that point it was important to try to listen to her, let her speak, let them get it out, let them say it, not the board to get upset about it. And at that point, as the manager, I stepped in and I said to Mrs. Smith, I would love to talk to you about this because I myself am experiencing, I just got a new washing machine at home and I know that everybody thinks that conserving is wonderful, but I feel like they put this much water for 62 pounds of towels. And she was, oh, yes, that's what I'm talking about. And just, I said, why don't you come in tomorrow and sit and meet with me? And she came in and we had a really nice discussion, probably a lot longer about a washing machine than I would have liked to have talked about. But believe me, at the end of the day, it was worth the hour. I proceeded to put a plan in place for her to be satisfied. We had the manager come from the laundry company. And what I did was I also kept the board informed of every step as we went. Because lots of times I know you get approached and they'll ask you a question and maybe you haven't spoken to the manager and you're not aware at what step or what point you're at. So I think it's important at those board meetings for all of the board members to be well aware of what that complaint was and to also make sure that they're hearing back from the management office. So they are also aware, and you're not put on the spot. You'll say, you know, yeah, I talked to the manager, and I understand the manager's coming to look. And we did. We went very deep into this problem, which wound up being nothing to do with the machines. And what it had to do was the trap on the drainage that needed to be adjusted and removed on 2 floors, and the problem was solved. So it took a bit of an effort, which is fine. But it also took this resident from coming to a board meeting and being upset every time, and the machines are a problem and they're a problem, to having one less situation at a board meeting that we didn't need to have. And I find that a lot of times, again, everybody waits to be more spectacular and have that moment where they want everybody in the lobby possibly to hear what they have to say. And it really causes a lot of negative attitude and vibrations throughout the whole building. Whereas when you diffuse it immediately, you solve it, and you keep the board aware, you do much better. The transparency is a key factor in my 25 years in the business. I just would rather give a lot more information. I like to have the conversations. I know sometimes you come home from work, you're not in the mood. I always tell the boards, You always have the management. That's what we're there for. We are there to deflect. We are there to protect the board. We are there to be your champion, your facilitator, to be able to explain the things. So your communication with your manager is incredibly important to diffusing situations. You need to be on the same page. We all need to be on the same page as a team. I am very big on the word team. From all of the employees who work with the management, and then inclusive of every board member and every resident. All of those pieces form the team that makes a building a success, that makes you have much less of the complaining, because everybody's on the same page. We all have the same goal. We all want to make, as best as we can, everybody pleased and happy to come home to their home every day. And if we can accomplish that, you're always going to have a handful. You're always going to have a couple, but that's okay. That's a lot easier to deal with than having a larger amount of people coming to you and constantly questioning. And if we're all together on the same team, you will find that you will really diffuse a lot of that because you have the answers. It's about having the answers. I know it's a volunteer position for all of you. We get paid to do it. I ask every board member when they run, why? Why are you running? Because I get paid, you do not. I'm not really sure I understand the concept, but you do it because you care about your community. You care about the value of your home. You care about having a nice lifestyle and coming home every night to that community where you're comfortable and happy. And I know you want the same thing for all your residents. So there is a way. It is important to be, communication is the key to everything. Understanding, listening, and then communicating back. I totally believe in the listening piece, but I also believe in the responsiveness. It is our duty to be responsive as board members and as management. And that's another piece, listening and responsiveness. If you get both of those in line, I think you'll be successful. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy.
Oh, you have your own mic. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. And I think on Cindy's kind of takeaway, what I'm hearing is self-awareness is important. Every great leader, and I put you all in the category of you are in a leadership role. If you don't think it's a leadership role, you need to reevaluate because you are in a leadership role. If you thought you were going to come to this session and we were going to give you some magic potion to get rid of all the people that are causing the problems, you're wrong. They don't. Some don't go away. In fact, they have relatives that live in all the communities around the country, which is amazing. But awareness is very, very important. And awareness is one of where we spend a lot of time on internally trying to train on this. So self-awareness. Self-awareness is knowing each of us have what I call a mood elevator, right? Every day, your mood goes up and down, depending on what happens. So if you look at your mood elevator, as in the main floor of every elevator of a hotel is where all the resources are. That is what I would categorize as staying curious. Your mood elevator, you should try to keep it at a stay curious level. As the elevator goes up, just like in hotels, that's when your mood is in good moods. But then unfortunately, there's things below the main floor, which is stuff that's the non-sexy stuff, right? The laundry, the garbage, the cars parked. That's when our mood elevator goes to a level of where we're frustrated, judgmental, angry. But when you're aware of your own mood, you can change the dynamics of when you're going to speak to somebody. And it's also being aware of the person you might be speaking to is where do you guess their mood elevator is? And you could tell someone who's coming at you with some action behind them and they have an axe to grind. So again, it's awareness is helpful in this process. See, it really doesn't come down to a technique of words. It comes down to technique of awareness. And you're in your role, and part of your role is trying to do your best. But you are human too. You are human, you will make mistakes. We at management make mistakes. There's too many tentacles that touch a community that we can't not make a mistake. But it's a matter of, is it catastrophic? Is it an emotional one to someone else? Is their problem so emotional that we're allowing it to come into our emotion? Sometimes we're not the problem, but we are part of the solution. But if you become the problem and it's not you, then all you're doing is putting more gasoline on the fire. This makes, I always say, in a calm setting like this, so logical. But then you go back tonight, and if you're having a meeting, you go, what the hell did that guy say? Because I'm ready to kill somebody. It changes the whole dynamics of it. But that's the awareness. It's when it counts is when you utilize your leadership. And you have to work on it. It's why they call it hard work. Otherwise, it'd be easy work, right? These are things that we don't gravitate to. But we are in a business that it is part of our life. It is part of our day-to-day of that, and it's part of our responsibilities. And again, keeping the logic and the balance of emotions in place is that it might be that person that never, ever is happy. Then just accept that person's never going to be happy. You don't have to dismiss them. You don't have to be rude to them. But when you know that, it's a different feeling, right? So I take it from very logical situations. If you're at an amusement park and you see a roller coaster, you pretty much know if you get on it what's going to happen. There's an expectation. And you make a choice before you get on. I'm not getting on because I don't like that. Or when I get on, there's going to be a white knuckle ride. You are on a white knuckle ride as a board member. It is a constant roller coaster. And at the end of the day, though, it's do you feel you've communicated with a fair eye and a fair tone? And if you did, realize that everyone is not going to agree. Just what makes the world go round, right? Everybody doesn't agree. It's a matter of gaining respect for each other on the roll, and then respecting that we might agree to disagree. Now, look, it's easier to say, but we've been doing this, and you've got to leverage your current management company too. Lean to them on how they can help. And a lot of times, board members will say this. I'm not going to say anybody in here would say this, but it's all the other board members who chose not to come into this session. That what they would say is, oh, I don't want to do this. I hate this. And I realize after 10 years, you're retiring more than the Rolling Stones did on their final tour. You just can't get away from it because there's something about this you like. But at the same time, are you leveraging your management companies to be the voice for you and to be the buffer, as Cindy said? So those are some of the things that we thought we would share with you. Hopefully you felt that there are probably a lot of things that you knew already, but if it reboots you, ask yourself this: are you doing it when it's needed to? Not sitting and saying, we do that. Do you really do that? Do you do it all the time? Can you be a little bit better at it? And my guess is, because I know I can, we could be a little bit better at this and a bit more mindful. So what we're going to do, we have about 15 minutes. We're going to open it up for Q&A. And the woman right here. Now, I don't know if we can, Jim, can I borrow you to grab the microphone and play Ellen DeGeneres and put some mic? Go ahead.
Got to run.
Okay. Shh. Go ahead.
We have a very great team. Our board currently is an extremely good team. We have differing opinions. We make very good, robust decisions. I have to commend you that you only have one instigator in your communities, because we have a lot of Monday morning quarterbacking. And what we're finding, and this is going to sound rather comical, the dog walkers are always the ones that are always second-guessing everything. But nobody comes to meetings. So I see this as an opportunity. I agree with a lot of what you're saying, and I think we put out newsletters. Is there anything that I can pull from in order to put out a president's note to indicate, hey guys, you come with solutions, or even provide your solution, write them to the property manager so that we can take them into consideration, because they're not attending meetings, and now we're having only quarterly meetings as a result. So I would appreciate some feedback on that. And
so
we have a lot
question
more
for
than
you,
one.
and by the way, we say one, but it's like 30 or 40, so we're with you.
Okay.
So, but the question I have, and then I'll ask Donna or Cindy on to elaborate, but is it a group of people, like, give me a rough figure of what you
We
would
have
think.
7 people on the board.
No, I'm saying the
Community?
Dog walkers.
the dog walkers, yes. Is it a handful, 2 handfuls?
No, dog walkers, the ones that are the instigators are probably, I don't know, 12, maybe,
'Cause
out of 366 units.
Okay, so sometimes what I would suggest is you probably know who might be the point person.
It's an ex-board member that is part of the problem.
Okay.
That kind of forgets what she should or shouldn't be saying. But it's a lot of just the second guessing. You know,
Right.
oh, I had an issue, and it's the bad blood and the ongoing.
But that's sometimes it has to flush itself out. That's a hard thing because that goes to the emotion,
Yeah.
right? If the board member left with a bit of a rub,
No, no. She
Okay.
didn't leave with a bit of a rub. She just had, you know, with the ethical part of it, you know, like what should or shouldn't be talked about. There were memory lapses. So I think that some of it, and I can't say that she's the instigator for everything. I just think that there are people that are just Monday morning quarterbacking.
is she in the room?
No.
Joke. You have to have a sense of humor in this business. Jeez.
Yeah.
Does anyone, Donnie, want to, or Cindy?
Yeah, I'm just curious about a couple of things. So does your board sign a confidentiality agreement when you get on the board? And the confidentiality agreement does include that even when you leave the board, you're supposed to keep in confidence?
Absolutely. And
Okay.
she is still part of committees, which, again, everybody had to sign and oblige.
Okay, so you covered that. Do you have a suggestion box in your lobby or anywhere that a person would be able to drop off a suggestion? Because it's always we have a suggestion box. It's a great way for people, whether they want to do it anonymously or if they want to put down where they live. But this way, you're actually going to be able to field some of those things and those questions prior to. So that's a good way, besides the president letter that you may send out giving good recommendation and suggestions how to handle things. I think you might want to try to think about some type of an influx of some type of a suggestion box or something if you don't have an area. Okay, so that would be great. You might want to consider that.
I'll put that in my president's letter.
Okay, great.
Stuff we forget about.
Good, good.
Another gentleman in the back there? Oh, no, here, Jim. That gentleman stands, sorry. Jim Maggot, ladies and gentlemen. Jim's wearing a teal shirt, and his favorite color is magenta. Okay, good.
Hi, thank you. I'm the president of an association, and we have 250 homeowners. A lot of them are dog owners, which is the subject, really. As a board and the property manager, we always stress communication with our homeowners to get back to them quickly. One homeowner sent a rather lengthy letter basically saying that we have problems with dog poop, perhaps so. And I have a great suggestion for you. Down in Florida, they have these poop bags spread out all over the community, and it works great. The board met very quickly, got back to her very quickly. We discussed it, and we decided we did not want to do it. And we have a lot of reasons not to. What happened next was the homeowner went ballistic. She insulted the board, had all nasty things to say, and we decided not to respond to her for this. 10 days later, she said, I want the board members' names, addresses, emails, phone numbers. How dare they not respond to me? And we talked about it. We still don't want to respond. We want to invite her to a board meeting to discuss it. But this issue comes into a lot of the cubbyholes of matters that you discussed. And you know, we're going to try to do the best we can, but if you have a suggestion to us as to how to diffuse the situation. Oh, and by the way, she lives across the street from me.
Can I
Thank you.
ask you a question? Do you have those meetings with those type of situations prior to your workshop, where you set up a private meeting with them with just the board, not make it at the public meeting? Do you ever do that?
We don't do that. It turns out most of our board meetings are attended by anywhere from 5 to 10 people people just either think we're doing a great job or they just don't care.
Well, you might want to consider prior to the open meeting portion.
Yes.
You may want to set up an interview with that particular resident in a closed session. I find that it works very well. We have had many over a period of time where you bring them in and it's more of a one-on-one with the board. I think the person is more honed in. They feel the focus is on them and their issue, and you're able to get into a pretty decent discussion and possibly come up with a resolution. I'm not saying it's a perfect thing or you'll get it every time, but it takes away from it being handled at an open situation where maybe you're going to give reports and other discussions, and it's a private kind of a meeting. So whether you all come 15 minutes prior to your open meeting and you just have a short closed session and you set up that appointment with the resident, I think it could help you somewhat.
And what, to Cindy's point, sometimes people do thrive on a crowd. You know, they have an audience, they work themselves up. I think also great level of communication, which is also a horrible part of communication, is email, right? Because people get very tough behind email, and they write nasty stuff, as you put. I usually suggest is acknowledge that you received the letter, because what you did is well, I shouldn't say what you did. What it could do is put a little bit of them. Now the hype is on. No one's responding. But if it's a Mr. or Mrs. So-and-so, we want you to know as effective May 2nd, we are in receipt. We are going to review this. We'd like to call you in for a meeting, or we'll get back to you. It's just the respective acknowledgement of that you did get it. Then, as a board, you can decide. I agree with Cindy that if you say, we'd like to come in and discuss this, but you also could say, look, we just want you, the tone of your letter was one of where we don't want to have this type of dialogue. Talk to us, give us your reasons, give us your solutions, but let's do this from a respectable manner. That's awareness of what I call influencing the influencer by your tone and by your approach. And it's hard because, look, we're all human. You see that letter, you're like, I'm not responding to them. But I always say, okay, then I wake up and say, I got to respond to them. You know, it's part of our job, right, of it. So we try to coach that, might be another solution.
Right. Yeah, she has not attended one board meeting in 8 years, but we'll invite her or do the private session. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
Facebook's been in the news recently. Where we are, we have, I'm a new trustee, 7 months. We have a Facebook page which has about 1,000 people on it. None of the trustees are on it. You were talking about the crowd. Somebody's dog pooped in my front yard. They didn't pick it up. That triggers about 75 comments, and boy, do they get nasty. There's a lot of name calling of trustees. They have nicknames, like one lady, one of our trustees, they call her the Queen. But our policy has been that we're not going to be part of it, that's unofficial, and we're not part of it. The trouble is that none of those, quite often, most of the people that make all these nasty comments, or the complainers, they won't come to the board meeting. Right. And we have an audience participation period where you, after the main meeting's over, you can come up and address the board. They won't come and bring those issues up. Yet the issues are festering, and you know, it just goes on and on. Do you have any suggestions?
Yeah, you know, so that's interesting because this is very common. This is really common. But you said a couple of key points. That one is it's an unofficial Facebook.
Yes.
So the board not being involved, I commend you. You shouldn't. What I find is most people are on for entertainment. I know this is going to sound, but some people just want to read things, and then you have the constant. I guarantee there's probably 8 to 15 that are the constant kind of roll the hand grenade in the room, pull the trigger, and walk out and see if they can fire up, you know, the crowd.
Well, it's a little bigger than that, but you're
okay. But from it, it's probably not the majority, though, right? Of the
Definitely
group,
not the majority.
Right. So sometimes if you just let it spin off on its own, I say to the board, stick to what your plan is. In the long run, if you're doing the right thing, it's going to resonate. It really will resonate. Now, there's going to be a pain that goes back to my roller coaster, the white knuckle ride. There's going to be pain on this journey there, but if the board doesn't let the emotion come in and they could stay focused on making sure they're communicating, making sure they're addressing the issues, I think in time what people do is they fall off of those. And at the end of the day, I say if it's toxic, don't read it, because if they really want you to know, they should come to the board meeting, because that's what they're about, right? Like you say, you give them a forum, come here, write us a letter. If you want to meet privately, like Cindy said, we'll do that. But at the end of the day, don't feel you have to go into the fire. You don't. You have a choice, right? And as long as you're communicating and you're sticking to your game, I think that's where you have to lean into each other and the management company continuing to coach everybody through those difficult times, because I do think it's brutal, you know, with the name call. Like, why do you got to get like that? If you're not, if you're that unhappy, move. If you're that unhappy, come to a board meeting and speak up. Tell us what you want in a matter of where it's at least coming across with an intent that you want us to communicate in a better light versus we might agree to disagree at the end of the day. But I know it's not an answer like, can we disconnect it? It is what it is. That's the hard part of social media. Now,
Thank you.
we have 4 minutes, so we'll do one. There's a woman right next to you. One more question.
Thank you for all the information. I'm presently serving my second year of a 2-year term, and 2 years ago in
Started to sound like a prison sentence. I was getting worried. I'm serving too. I was like, oh, where are we going with this?
sometimes it feels like it. And I got involved with getting on the board, I think you mentioned it before, because I came to the board meetings with a lot of issues and was challenged very strongly to get on the board if I wanted to do something about it. So I did, and I won. And, and the situation is, I'm in a community, a 55-plus community, so the previous board members were on the board for at least 7 to 10 years consecutively. And I'm sort of like the new kid on the block after all of that. And because of that, they started rolling off. Some got voted off. Some just gave up and resigned, I guess because they didn't want to work with the new people. And so now they are the, what did you call them? The now they are the neutrals, you know, throwing stones back at the board, you know, nitpicking everything that we're doing or advances or progress that we're trying to make. So, and I appreciate what you said, working closely with the management company, but I have the same situation. The management company has been working with this previous board for the last 10 years, and they have a very comfortable relationship. And sometimes we're not sure whether they're serving the previous board or the new board. So what kind of suggestions can you give to me to diffuse things but not have a lot of resources on the management?
Real quick, and then we're getting the axe, and we'll talk to you offline. We can talk to you, but real quick, if anyone's interested in that, I go back to your management company, reinforce that they work for the association. The association they work for are for the people that sit in those seats. That doesn't mean they can't be friendly and work with former board members, but they have to respect the team in that. I think you need to kind of go address with everyone. By the way, thank you so much, everybody. Enjoy your community and enjoy today. Take care. Thank you.